The United States and its allies are stepping up the fight against ISIS. Tuesday, the Syrian Democratic Forces, that's a U.S.-backed alliance of Kurdish-Arab fighters, launched a large-scale offensive on Raqqa. That's the de facto capital of the Islamic State. And a major military effort against ISIS is underway in Fallujah right now. Iraqi forces launched an offensive on Sunday to retake the key stronghold west of Baghdad, which has been under ISIS control for more than 2 years. Mike Baker, former CIA covert operations officer and president of global security firm Diligence, is here. I got to tell you, we keep seeing these same things over again. The White House saying, oh, we're taking back territory, we're taking back territory. It's kind of hard to understand when you're here on the ground, Mike. Are we really winning this war on terror down there?
We're moving slowly in the right direction. That's not a very satisfying answer, I know. But look, we are having some success. We're having some success in taking back some territory. We're having some success in degrading their revenue streams. We're having these offensives now against Fallujah and Raqqa. But the unfortunate reality is that unless we are more aggressive, and unfortunately that means more troops on the ground, and that means more U.S. troops because nobody else is going to pick up that ball and run with it, then we're going to be in this slow, steady, mission creep type of progress, and it could take a very long time. And you know what? While we're attacking Raqqa, while we're attacking Fallujah, ISIS is adapting. They're moving more resources to Libya. They're moving resources elsewhere. So the longer this takes, the more likely it is that we're going to wake up and say, look, we got Raqqa back. Look, we got Fallujah back. And then the problem is just now over here, and we have to deal with it there.
So when you talk about the U.S., they have troops on the ground. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair said this: there's no way of defeating these people without defeating them on the ground. Airstrikes are not going to defeat ISIS. They've got to be tackled on the ground. Is he right?
Yes, that's a military truth right there. That's you can't. Anybody who wants to argue that hasn't dealt with these problems and hasn't been at the front edge of the spear. So, but again, who's got the will? And who wants to do that? We're all exhausted from the war on terror, and rightly so. But we have to understand what that means. If we're not going to commit, and frankly we are committing, and again, this is not dissimilar from going back to the Vietnam War, when we originally had some advisors on the ground, and then they kept creeping up in numbers, and we didn't want to talk about the combat role. Well, look, we're in combat there, but we don't have sufficient numbers, even if you're just talking about forward operators, to direct targeting, to direct the airstrikes. We need more of that sort of support. What does that require? That requires additional support to keep them safe and to provide all those logistics. This thing will continue to creep along, and I suspect that, you know, the current administration, for a variety of reasons, doesn't want to deal with this. And so they're happy to let it go until the next election, and whoever steps into that office is going to have to figure out, do we increase this to try to win it in a relatively decent amount of time, or do we continue this stalemate strategy?
It is a stalemate. Many people believe that and feel that way. How do you, it almost sounds like a broken record, Mike. You've got the situation in Iraq. We would send troops on the ground. They'd get in there. They'd secure areas. Very hard work. Get these Iraqi forces up to speed. Then we'd pull out.
Right.
Everything falls apart.
Right.
Is that not the case in Syria? How do you get them to regain and hold control?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is the case in Syria, just like it is the case anywhere else where you're talking about this type of problem. To hold the territory that you retake, you have to have a presence. Whether that presence is Kurdish troops, whether it's Iraqi troops, whether it's U.S. troops, somebody has to be there. As soon as you pull out, you create a vacuum. And as much as we'd like to think that the people will then self-organize and create a pseudo-democratic environment, it's not going to happen. We know that. We don't need any more case studies to show that. So, again, I go back to the same problem. We're all exhausted, right? Nobody has a political will to take this on. We're hoping that the Iraqi military, that the Kurds and others will get trained up and resourced enough to do this and then to hold that turf on their own. That's a happy day. We've been hoping for that happy day for over 10 years.
So if either of the presidential nominees were to come to you, say, Mike, what should we do with ISIS? What would you say?
Well, I would say that my answer is not going to be followed, because we need to commit more resources. And again, I understand perfectly how emotive that is. But if your question is how do we defeat them, we have to be more aggressive on the ground. We have to continue doing the things that we're doing. We have to continue working to develop better outreach and resources and communication with Muslim communities all over the place, not just here in the U.S. but elsewhere. We have to develop that for operational reasons because you're trying to get better sources of information. We have to deal with the refugee issue. We have to deal with the social media concerns that ISIS has demonstrated capabilities in. You have to do all these things concurrently. But part of it is, again, this presence on the ground. And without that, you and I are going to be talking about this in the next 5 years.
And when polled, Americans say they don't want more intervention abroad. So that's something else the White House always has to juggle with. Mike Baker, thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you very much.